and everyone who helped make this event possible. We want to give special thanks to Nate Eaton, news director at eastidahonews.com, for serving as our moderator this evening. We appreciate East Idaho News and its commitment to keeping our region informed and engaged in local issues. We're also thankful to the Idaho Falls Chamber of Commerce and the Bonneville County Republican Central Committee, as well as the chamber members who took the time to submit thoughtful questions. Your involvement helps ensure tonight's discussion reflects the real concerns of our community. As students, we value opportunities like this. Civic engagement doesn't begin after graduation. It starts now. It's by listening, learning, and participating respectfully in the democratic process. Thank you to the candidates for being here and for your willingness to serve. And thank you all for supporting civil dialogue and informed debate.
Thank you to Grace, and welcome to all of you. We are happy to be here with 3 different debates tonight. We will begin with Legislative District 32B, followed by Legislative District 32A, followed by the Bonneville County Coroner. Here's how the evening will go. Each candidate will get 2 minutes for an opening statement. Then we will proceed with questions. The same question will be asked to each candidate so they can answer each question. They will get 90 seconds to answer those questions. If the opponent names, or if an opponent is named in an answer, then the other candidate has 30 seconds to give a rebuttal if they wish. We have 2 students down here, Spencer Peck and Carter Hills, who are keeping time with a clock. So candidates, please keep an eye on the clock. When your time is up, you will hear a loud alarm clock that will either make you think it's time to get out of bed, but what it really means is quit talking so that we can move on. Please be respectful of the time. Tonight's question, there you go, they just sounded a little preview. Tonight's questions come from a small group of community members, and we hope to cover a variety of different topics. And to begin tonight, we have Aaron Bingham and Brian McKellar for Legislative District 32B. We have a scientific way in how we're going to determine who goes first. It's a spin wheel, random generator here. Their names are here. I'm going to push the middle. Wherever the arrow lands will determine who goes first. And it looks like Miss Bingham, if you want to go your opening statement for 2 minutes.
Okay, fantastic. Good evening, thank you for having me. I'm Erin Bingham, and I love Bonneville County. My husband, Val, and I, we have lived in Bonneville County for 20 years. We have 4 children that we've raised in our community. We've built our business here. We've invested in the community, in the schools, in nonprofits, and I believe that Bonneville County deserves a steady voice in Boise. I was appointed to this position in January by Governor Little, and I went into one of the hardest budget sessions Idaho has had in years. I learned very quickly that decisions made in Boise show up at home, that it impacts our roads, property taxes, healthcare access, public safety, agriculture, and water. My approach is simple. I listen to constituents, I talk to local stakeholders, I read the bills, I ask how it affects Bonneville County, and then I vote based on my constituents, the Constitution, and my conscience. I'm an accountant, a business owner, a mom, an Idaho Republican. I believe in limited government, fiscal responsibility, strong families, strong schools, public safety, agriculture, local control, and protecting values that make Idaho a great place to live. I'm not beholden to a scorecard, an interest group, or a political machine. My job is to represent District 32, and I would be honored to continue serving you.
Thank you, Mr. McKellar.
Good evening. I'm here tonight with grave reservations about this debate. I want to be transparent because the public has the right to know. My opponent, Aaron Bingham, has paid East Idaho News thousands of dollars, over $7,000 for advertising. They're not neutral hosts. They're a paid vendor for her campaign. This event is also being organized by the Greater Idaho Falls Chamber of Commerce through board member William Mathey. The same man who is right now on Facebook giving my opponent his full-throated endorsement while he's supposed to be running a neutral debate. So let's call this what it is. This is establishment protecting its own. There's clear conflicts, interests stacked against me before I even open my mouth. But notwithstanding those concerns, I'm here anyway. I'm here because the people of this district deserve to hear from every candidate, not just the ones the insiders want to promote, and more importantly, you deserve someone who will actually hold politicians accountable. For too long, the Capitol has been business as usual. Insiders looking for insiders, special interests writing the rules while working families get squeezed. I'm sick of it, and I know you are too. I'm not here to play nice with the system. I'm here to fight it. I will go to the Capitol and call out the waste, the cronyism, the corruption without hesitation, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's unpopular. If that ruffles feathers here tonight or in the Capitol, so be it. My opponent can keep her paid vendors and her cozy establishment endorsements. I'll take the backbone to speak the truth and the guts to hold our politicians accountable every single day. The people are done with politics as usual. They want a fighter. That's me, and that's exactly what you'll get if you send me to the Capitol.
Thank you. Mr. McKellar, first question, and then Ms. Bingham. You mentioned wasteful spending there in your opening statement. What areas do you believe should be cut? Mr. McKellar.
I mean, there's several. Like, the whole reason the Doge Committee was set up was to help conform to the big, beautiful bill. They talked about cutting Medicaid expansion, which I know is a tough thing to swallow here, but it would have saved us $150 million. It would have made all the school budgets, it would have made the protection budgets, it would have made the transportation budgets whole, but our legislation couldn't get around it. So what happened? We made cuts to every other service. And in Medicaid, we made cuts to the most vulnerable populations. We made cuts to children and the elderly and the disabled. And people died because of the cuts that were made. Like, we had figured this out months ago. So I think we need to look at that. I think we need to look at Idaho Public Television. There's plenty of things to cut.
Thank you. Ms. Bingham.
Thank you. This was a tough budget year. I was appointed 3 days before the session began, so the learning curve was quick. As far as things that are cut, waste, fraud, and abuse, for sure. Some of the things that we can look at are duplicative boards and commissions, administrative overlap, travel budgets, efficiencies. My opponent wants to cut Medicaid expansion. However, we have the vote. They had the votes to cut Medicaid expansion, and they still didn't cut it. And why is that? Because it doesn't save money. So Medicaid expansion was created for the working poor. So the state pays 10% of that cost, and the federal government pays an additional the 90%, the remaining 90%. So this is $1 billion that is put into our economy and helps to provide the working poor who are working but don't make enough to afford insurance on their own. So when these people are taken off Medicaid expansion, they don't just magically become insured. And so where do those costs go? They go to our local communities. They turn up on our property taxes. So before Medicaid expansion, we had the indigent funds and the CAP funds that helped to fill this gap. But when Medicaid expansion was passed, those went away. The other result you'll see is you'll see an increase in your own personal insurance premiums. So I think it's important that when we cut, that these are true cuts, not just cost transfers to our local communities.
You both mentioned Medicaid. Let's move on to that. Ms. Bingham, what is your overall view of the level of services provided by Medicaid? Does it provide too many, too few, or the appropriate level of for those who qualify?
Okay, there's different levels of Medicaid. So there's Medicaid for people who are disabled, and then there's also Medicaid expansion, which is for the working poor. As far as things that we can do for Medicaid, I think that there's ways that we can improve that. I would definitely be in support of work requirements, co-pays where allowable. Also, I think it's important that we help to direct medical care to primary providers and to and to emergent care. So these are non-emergent services, rather than having them go to the emergency room. So I think that Medicaid is an important part of our community to help protect those who are the most vulnerable in our community, both those, especially those with severe mental health, with disabilities. And so I think that there's a broader question that I think that Medicaid is an important part. I think it provides adequate care in many instances, but I do think that there's ways that we can look to improve the Medicaid program.
Thank you. Mr. McKellar?
But it's not. Like, look at what happened this last legislative session. We literally hurt the most vulnerable populations by making cuts to those populations instead of making the cut to the working, abled men that are living in their mommy's basements. Like, I'm sorry, if we as a society can help people earn a little bit more money so they can qualify for health care. There's plenty of jobs out there. But now we've become dependent on a system where it's like, I don't have to try, I'll just get my health care and be done with it. That's not healthy for Idaho. It's not helping us at all. Like, this is a system that we're becoming dependent on. And yeah, we get $900 million from the government, but since when did we become a state that wants to be on the federal government's teat? Like, when did Idaho become that? Like, we've always been independent, and I think we should gain our independence back.
Next question, sticking with the healthcare Medicaid topic, Mr. McKellar. Idaho is projected to receive about $186 million annually in federal funds for the next 5 years to support rural hospitals and providers. Would you recommend the state take that money? And how would you prioritize the use of the funds, particularly given that some of these hospitals are at risk of closing?
We got to be careful, because if we take those funds and we don't appropriate them in a way that we can not have to continue using those funds, then we're going to be in trouble again, and we're going to have to continue funding those things. I think the best way to allocate it is through technology, which I know is hard to adapt, but I think the best way to allocate those funds is through telemedicine and mobile technology to help these to help the rural hospitals and the areas that are struggling to reach health care. But if we set it up in a way that we're going to have to continually support them with more taxpayer dollars, we're going to have to raise taxes. We got to do it smart. We got to do it in a way that we use the funds to build an infrastructure that can sustain itself, so we don't have to continue getting funds from the federal government.
Ms. Bingham?
Yes, thank you. So the Trump administration, or the federal government, passed what's called the Rural Transformation Funds. And this is important because a lot of our small communities, they struggle when it comes to healthcare. One of the key indicators of whether a person will live or die is whether or not they're within 45 minutes of healthcare. So the federal government has identified this need in our rural communities, and so that is why the Rural Transformation Funds were created. Now, when it comes to federal funds, we're all concerned about the national debt. It's skyrocketing, it's soaring, we're worried about what it's doing to our children's future. However, let's think about it this way. If we were to deny taking these federal funds that have been allocated for the Rural Transformation Fund, would it decrease my tax liability, my federal tax liability? Would it reduce the national debt? The answer to that is no. My federal income tax bill would not go down. That federal money would not go to reduce the national debt. It would just go to California or to another state. So if we are paying into the federal system, we might as well take that program. The federal government needs to fix itself. Idaho has a balanced budget amendment, and I would hope that the federal government will work towards that same goal.
Thank you. Let's move on to education. K through 12 public school funding continues to be a key issue in Idaho. Do you believe current state funding levels are adequate, or is the state underfunding or overfunding education? Ms. Bingham?
Okay, I don't think Idaho has quite figured that out yet, because every couple years you see that our school districts are putting forth levies. Okay, so I think it's still kind of in question. So what we need to look at is, why are schools continually asking for more money? So I think this kind of goes back to the funding formula. So the funding formula for education was created in 1994. So a lot has changed since 1994, and it doesn't particularly adapt to the changing priorities in our education system. So I think that it's important, in talking with Superintendent Critchfield, our local school districts, and teachers, one of the things that I identified actually before I went to the legislature is school districts receive different pots of money, but each pot of money is very specific. It can be used for this, or it can be used for that. There's not a lot of flexibility. So I feel that it's important that we need to work on the funding formula so that we give our schools the flexibility to use that money that they receive in the ways that are necessary, that help to create the programs and the curriculum and the training that they need for our students today to help improve education for our students.
Mr. McKellar?
They're definitely underfunded. They're absolutely underfunded. And that's why we need to control our spending, and we need to get back to the core principles of what our state needs to fund, which is protection, transportation, and K through 12 education. We have plenty of programs that we're funding in the state of Idaho that don't meet those three criteria. So what did we do? We made sacrifices to the K through 12 education fund. They didn't get the raises they needed. We slashed virtual care. And it was all because we didn't listen to the DOJ committee that gave us the advice on where we needed to cut to keep those programs whole. So yeah, they are underfunded. And if you vote me in there, I'm going to cut the spending that the state of Idaho shouldn't be in, so we can make those budgets whole again.
Mr. McKellar, the new parental choice tax credit allows families to receive up to $5,000 per child to help cover qualified educational expenses. Do you support the program in its current form, and if not, what would you change?
I support the program in its current form. I've said that from the beginning, since we had that nomination meeting where they elected Aaron, to the Neil Larson show, to now. Like, I support it. I think we have had homeschoolers who have basically done it themselves forever. They were always the smartest kids in our classes, and for the first time, we're actually supporting them and giving them some means to get some extra resources to help educate their kids. Not every model fits every kid. That's why the charter schools have exploded. That's why the virtual schools have exploded. And that's why now school choice is like ranked the third largest school district now in the state of Idaho. It's clear it's popular. It's clear that parents want choice in their children's education.
Ms. Bingham?
I support school choice as a principal. We have lots of options. We have public schools, we have charter schools, we have private schools, and we have homeschool. And it's important that parents have the opportunity to help their children receive the education that they feel best meets their child's needs. Now, my concerns in regards to HB 93 can't come in regards to transparency and accountability. Often, when we talk about taxpayer dollars, those transparency and accountability are things that are really important. And right now, the way that HB 93 is set up is we have allocated $50 million in tax credits, but we have no idea to be able to figure out how that's being spent. So while parents need to have the opportunity of how to educate their children, but I also think it's important that when we're trying to create competition, that it's also fair competition. So our local schools have a lot of regulations when it comes to teachers and curriculum and all these other things. And then we have similar dollars that don't have those same criteria. So if we're going to allow for lack of regulation with current education with the HB 93 money, then I also think we need to look at ways to help our local schools and our private schools have less regulation. So if we're trying to create fair competition, then we need to be on the same playing ground.
Ms. Bingham, eastern Idaho is primarily made up of groundwater users, whereas central and western Idaho have more surface water users. How would you work to protect eastern Idaho groundwater users and access to the Snake River aquifer?
Thank you. This is a great question. So water has been a huge issue. So in 2024, we had thousands of acres that were red tagged and were threatened to be shut off. Now, I support ongoing infrastructure funding for water projects. In the last couple years, the last 2 years in the legislature, they have approved $30 million for ongoing water infrastructure projects. Now, it's important when we talk about groundwater versus surface water, we typically have, in a good snow year, unlike this year, we typically have a lot of water. Now, our problem is having the ability to store that. So we need to look at ways to be able to store that surface water so we have enough surface water, and then also to be able to recharge the aquifer. So I would help advocate for programs that both look to additional storage and for recharging the aquifer. We need to make sure that Bonneville County has a seat at the table when we're in the water discussions, because this protects not only our farmers, it protects industries in our community, and it also protects our growing community.
Mr. McKellar?
Honestly, this question makes me so mad. Because a year ago, this was a problem. They were curtailment, they were curtailing farmers, locking down their water. We knew we were going into a drought this legislative session. We knew it. And what was done that's actually going to help our farmers? When I talk to our farmers, they're telling me that they can only do 2 cuts of hay, which means they're not going to be profitable because they're worried that they're not going to have the water that's accessible for them. I'll be honest, guys, I'm not the water savior. Like, I don't have this brilliant of idea how to fix it, but I know what it needs to feel like. I know when I talk to my farmers, they need to be able to tell me I'm not afraid that I won't have the water I need to water my crop. And until I hear that answer, I'm going to keep working on it. But I was extremely disappointed in this legislative session because it should have been taken more seriously as an issue, and it wasn't. And now everyone wants to have a solution for it, and, well, here we are. So we'll see what happens this season.
Mr. McKellar, how would you address labor shortages in the ag sector?
Are we having labor shortages in the ag sector? I don't know.
What are your farmers telling you?
What?
What are the farmers telling you?
The farmers I'm working with, they're fine. Yeah. Here in eastern Idaho, they're doing great. I think in the Treasure Valley, they might be struggling a bit. I think I saw something on the news with that. I think we need to work more with H-1B visa programs and some of the legal ways of bringing in immigration. But the farmers I work with don't say there's a shortage.
Ms. Bingham?
So in regards to agriculture, H-1B visas, they apply only to local farmers. So dairies, which are a year-round business, H-1B visas don't apply to them. And so, yes, we do have shortages in farm workers, and so it's imperative that we look at H-1B visas, making sure that we're having them approved for our local farmers so they have some of the workforce they need, the individuals who want to come into work in our communities. But we also need to look at the dairy community because they are exempted from this and they're not allowed to use those H-1B visas. And so there's a gap or a shortage in respect to that. And so I think it's something important that we look at.
Ms. Bingham, affordable housing is one of the top concerns for people here in East Idaho and across the state. The legislature has considered measures to override local zoning rules. Do you support this approach, or should cities retain their control?
No, I believe in local control. I think that the decisions made for local communities is best made here. So when it comes to comprehensive plans and planning and zoning, those decisions are best made at home, not in Boise. because we have different sized communities. Boise is large, we have small communities, and so that affects everyone differently. So I think it's important that we maintain that local control so cities can make the decisions that are best for their cities. Now, we had quite a few housing bills this session, and some of them I supported. The ones that I supported were the ones that helped to increase supply or access, removing regulatory barriers that unnecessarily increase the cost of housing. However, I did not support those housing bills that removed local control. One bill that I voted no on but passed was the small home subdivisions, which I think is a great idea, building smaller homes on smaller lot sizes. However, a city needs to be able to plan for that type of housing in their community. They need to be able to have the infrastructure and things necessary. And so I think that local control, deciding what gets built where, is best left up to our local communities.
Mr. McKellar?
Look, I don't like the idea of like C Corps owning a bunch of property. I don't think anybody in Idaho likes that. But when I own a second property, I should be able to do with it what I like, okay? Whether the city or the county wants to tell me otherwise, if it's my property under an LLC, it's my property, I should be able to do with it, whether that's Airbnb it, whether that's short-term rental, full-term rental. One of the principles is life, liberty, and land, being here in the United States. So my red flag always goes up anytime there's a bill that tries to take over, you know, any type of city or county right. I want as much power to the people as closest as possible. But when it comes to property, especially when it's your own or just like your second, people need to have the ability to do with it as they want.
Mr. McKellar, do you support policies allowing undocumented residents, immigrants without criminal records to remain and work in Idaho, or should there be stricter enforcement?
Say that again?
Do you support policies allowing undocumented immigrants without criminal records to remain and work in Idaho, or should stricter enforcement be implemented?
No, I think we need to have stricter immigration laws. Like, I think if we continue to be a state that allows for illegal immigrants to come in and know that it's a place that they can get away with, I think we're going to continue to have the crime and the gangs and the drugs. Like, I think we're housing, what is it, $8 million worth of illegal immigrants in our jails right now. Like, there's drugs that are coming in, there's crime that are coming in. I think we need to do our part in enforcing immigration reform.
Ms. Bingham?
Thank you. So when I went to the legislature, we had quite a few immigration bills this session. And I full-heartedly believe it is important that we secure our borders. President Trump has made this one of his priorities of his administration, is one, to secure the borders. Second, if you are here legally and you have committed a crime, you need to be removed to your country of origin. And President Trump has also called for comprehensive immigration reform. The immigration system in our country has been broken for many years, and I'm hopeful that we can get something done. But we need to remember that immigration is primarily a federal issue. So we had a lot of bills, and so the first thing that I did is that I called our local sheriff, who is complying with the federal government and with the ICE. And I asked him on each of these immigration bills, how does this affect our community? And Sheriff Holtz had a couple of concerns. One of the first concerns he had was the ability that it would be tying his hands. They are on the front, our law enforcement is on the front lines. They understand what's happening day to day. They need to be able to address the issues that we have locally, whether it be gangs, drugs, domestic violence. And so we need to be talking to our local law enforcement to see how does this affect them. Now, second, my concern with some of these immigration bills is that they were unfunded mandates. And I do not support passing unfunded mandates onto our local community, which will raise our property taxes for the local government to do the federal government's job.
Thank you. And with that, it is now time for closing statements.
Okay.
Ms. Bingham, if you want to start first, and then Mr. McCullough, you can have the last word.
Thank you for being here tonight. Like I said, I love Bonneville County. I think that there is so many great things about Idaho, and I love living here. It's why my husband and I have raised our children here and lived here for the last 20 years. I think that there's so many great things about the state of Idaho. Are there things we need to fix? Sure. But I think that there's more that's good about our community than there's things that are wrong. But I want you to know why I'd like to continue serving you. I'm an Idaho Republican. I'm a business owner. I'm an accountant. I'm a wife, a mom, and someone who deeply loves my community. I believe in strong families, limited government, public safety, local responsibility, fiscal responsibility, local control, education, agriculture, and protecting the Idaho way of life. This was a really difficult session. We faced a lot of budget constraints, and there was a lot of hard issues and budget and hard votes. But in all of this, my focus remained on how does this affect Bonneville County. I talked to our sheriff, our teachers, our farmers, business owners, healthcare providers, city and county leaders, and constituents across the district. I read the bills, and I assessed how will this affect Bonneville County. This is the kind of representative I will continue to be. I will not outsource my vote to a scorecard or special interest groups. I will not support political theater when the details hurt our community. I will work hard, ask questions, listen carefully, and make decisions based on my district and my community. Bonneville County deserves a representative who is present, prepared, and focused on the issues that matter at home. What are those things? Affordability, education, schools, roads, public safety, property taxes, healthcare, and our growing population. I'd be honored to continue serving you in District 93, and I would appreciate your vote on May 19th.
Thank you. Mr. McKellar.
You saw the difference between someone who is comfortable inside the system and someone who is willing to challenge it. Look, I didn't come here just to point out problems. I came here to have a clear vision of what we can do better. We need to get rid of government spending that doesn't make sense. We need to put parents back in charge of education when families have options, schools improve, and kids win. We need to get serious about immigration. Laws matter, borders matter, and the people of Idaho deserve a system that is orderly, fair, and actually enforced. Issues that former Representative Wendy Horman fought for, and is why, as of tonight, she has endorsed my candidacy so I can continue the fight. We need to stop pretending that the way the Capitol operates right now is acceptable, because it's not. Too many politicians go along to get along. Too many decisions are made behind closed doors. Too many people get elected saying one thing and then fall right in line once they get there. That's not going to be me. I don't owe anything to the insiders. I don't have to protect a system that's broken, and I'm not afraid to stand alone if that's what it takes to do what's right. If you send me to the Capitol, you're getting exactly what you saw tonight, someone who will speak plainly, stand firmly, and fight for you, whether it's popular or not. So if you're tired of politics as usual, and if you're tired of feeling like your voice doesn't matter, and if you want someone who will go to the Capitol and actually challenge the system, then I'm asking for your vote. My name is Brian McKellar.
Thank you, Brian McKellar, Aaron Bingham, your candidates for Legislative District 32B. We appreciate you both being here. We will now take a 10-minute break and come back with Legislative District 32A, Stephanie Mickelson and Kelly Golden. stream. We are broadcasting live from Compass Academy in Idaho Falls, about to have a conversation with two candidates running for Legislative District 32A. We have Kelly Golden and Stephanie Mickelson. Welcome to the both of you. Just to review for how tonight will run, you'll have 2 minutes for an opening statement. There's a timer right here that these Compass students are holding up. And then we'll proceed with questions. You'll each be asked the same question. We'll rotate back and forth who goes first. And you'll have 90 seconds to answer those questions, and then you will get a closing statement for 2 minutes each. And to determine who goes first, we've put your names in the random wheel generator. And it looks like it's Kelly Golden, and perfectly it was yellow, so that fits your name. Ms. Golden, you can go first with your opening statement.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Nate, and thank you to all of you for being here on a random Tuesday night here in East Idaho. Charlie Kirk said, you better keep asking questions because it's the only thing that keeps us free. And that's why tonight matters, because your questions matter. Everyone needs to have a voice in this process and in the future of our state. It's not lost on me that this event tonight is being held at one of the brightest lights in District 91 here at Compass Academy. These kids are the future of our state, and one of the reasons that I am so passionate about what goes on in Boise is because each and every single one of these kids is going to inherit what decisions are made there in Boise. And you guys might recognize me from 2 years ago. It was the first time stepping into this whole process. I learned an awful lot, and I never stopped learning over the last 2 years. It's been my privilege and my pleasure to get to know so many more of you in this room and across our state, across our community, and to learn even more of the ins and outs of how our state is operated. I look forward to this evening. I look forward to a healthy debate, and I look forward to the questions that are going to be asked because, as Charlie said, it's the only thing that keeps us free.
Thank you, Ms. Golden. Ms. Mickelson?
Thank you, Nate. I'm not sure which is a tougher gig for you, doing this debate tonight or interviewing Lori Daybell, but I guarantee we'll be a little bit less dramatic. I'm Stephanie Mickelson, and I want you to know that although my opponent and I may not agree on everything tonight, I think the one thing we can all agree on is our love for Bonneville County and for the residents of this community and this state. I was born and raised in Idaho Falls. I have raised my family here. So I am a wife, a mother of 4, a grandma to 18, a small business owner for the last 38 plus years. And I have been vitally connected to my community through my community service, from being an art mom to working with the Farm Bureau to serving on a hospital board to being an inaugural trustee of the College of Eastern Idaho. So my roots run really deep, and one of the things I've noticed in the last 4 years as I've served is how much we are having Boise, or the great state of Ada, trying to control so much of what's going on here in Bonneville County. And I hope, and my wish is, that we will continue to work towards, and that's what I have fought for, is local control for our local communities and for our local school districts and for our local counties. And one of the things that I have found most important in my work in the last 4 years is making sure that I connect with the people in my community and the people that I represent. And I will continue to do that as I continue to serve the people of Bonneville County in whatever capacity that I serve. But I want you to know I am your voice, and I have stood strong when I have had lots of opposition. I have stood up for Bonneville County, and I will continue to do that. Thank you, Nate.
Surveys show that the most important issue for many voters right now is the economy. Why don't we start off by talking about taxes and the budget? Recent tax policy changes have reduced state revenue. Should Idaho continue pursuing tax cuts even if they result in a possible reduction of public services? Ms. Mickelson?
I think we have to look really closely. Idaho in the last 5 to 10 years has done record-breaking tax cuts. And one of the things that we're finding is we have to take time to let some of those things equalize out. And if we do tax cuts on the state level, but what we're really doing is doing a tax shift, that will not make our local property tax owners very happy. And when we are not funding the things that are required to be funded by the states, including things like our schools, our roads, our bridges, things that are required by state statute, all we are doing is shifting that to local property tax owners. And as I've reached out to my local people, one of the biggest concerns people have is their property taxes and how they feel like they're being taxed out of their home. So I am not in support of raising people's taxes. I think that we need to use the public money very wisely, but we also have to make sure that the responsibilities that are supposed to be the state stay being funded at the state level.
Ms. Golden?
Idaho is tied with Hawaii for the debt-to-income ratio. For every $1 that Idahoans earn, they are $2 in debt. And so the numbers are real. It's not just everybody feeling like they're making less. It's actual reality. And so the idea of raising taxes, the idea of continuing to raise taxes on Idahoans who are already struggling at the pump, at the grocery store, even at the Sportsman's Warehouse when their kids need baseball cleats, that sounds like cruel and unusual punishment. I am definitely for trying to eliminate property taxes for seniors and for homeowners who it's their primary residence. And I want to make that really clear. We don't need folks that have 15 investment properties all getting the property tax break. We also need to start looking at other income streams here in Idaho, whether that is looking at some of our natural resources and how we can benefit from some of that, where right now all of that goes to federal, because 60% of Idaho is controlled by, or 60% of Idaho lands is controlled by the federal government, which also means all of that income is not available to Idaho. And so while I don't want to say that we have an income problem and a spending problem, we do. We need to be able to look at streams of income besides taxes and federal income.
Thank you. Are there areas that you feel don't receive enough funding, and how would you increase revenue to those areas? Ms. Golden?
I know that, well, I don't know if we saw everybody on East Idaho News and some of the other social media that there have been some issues over at Skyline High School. I know that everybody is looking at schools as needing funding, and I want to take a look at where the funds are being allocated. I don't know that I'm ready to increase funding to schools, but I'm definitely ready to do an audit to make sure that the funds that are going are actually going to where they belong, not to overhead, not to places where it doesn't need to go. We want to make sure that it's going to the quality of education that the students are getting. I also am a big proponent of the school choice bill, HB 93. We saw success in that this last session. It maxed out. And so I think Idaho families responded to that, and that's probably a program that needs to grow.
Thank you. Ms. Mickelson?
I think we need to spend more money on education. The investment that we make today will pay for future generations. And right now, I think we have a legislature that's only worried about today and not worried about what our future looks like. And if we'll take the time to make the investments in our education, we will have that pay dividends back. For example, right now, we cut our spending to our College of Eastern Idaho. Well, that created a backlog of over 40 kids in one program, that if we had had the money and had made the investment in those programs, we, within 2 years, would see those people contributing and giving back to our communities, being future taxpayers. When we start cutting programs, and they cut the program for the Idaho Digital Learning Alliance that had phenomenal results. There were kids in every district in this state using that, the rural ones to the city ones, and we cut that by 55%. One of the things that we have going on right now is we're funding bricks and mortar schools at the same level that we're funding online schools. So our bricks and mortar schools that are supposed to provide a physical presence and provide programs like sports programs and those kind of things, they're being funded at the very same level that online private charter schools are being funded for. So the public schools that have to have a lunch lady and have a duty and all those kind of things, guess what? They have to provide that, and yet we're providing money over here for online private ones that don't have to provide those same services. We need to do something about the funding formula. When we talk about some of the inefficiencies in our system, we've got some, and we need to make some changes.
Thank you. Let's move on to water, which we discussed earlier tonight, but question for both of you. What do you believe is the state's responsibility in funding and maintaining water infrastructure, and how should agricultural needs be prioritized? Ms. Mickelson, we'll start with you.
Well, as we all know, Idaho is a first-in-time, first-in-right state. One of the things we also need to remember is that the state owns the water, and they give a right to the farmers or to the operators to use that water. We have to invest in the future of our state to protect this resource. Right now, our resource, the Eastern Snake River Plain Aquifer, is the size of Lake Erie. And we can either choose right now, before we end up in a deficit position, to make investments in that so that we can change the future and make sure that we protect that resource, which is what we did with the 2024 agreement. And then we will have that for future use. One of the biggest things we've come to realize as we've changed some of our agricultural practices is we have to find ways that when we have big runoff years that we're getting that water into the underground aquifer. The underground aquifer is the most efficient place to store water because we don't lose it to evaporation and loss like we do on surface water systems. So as we move forward, the state has a huge responsibility to invest in that because they are the owners of that water right. And I will continue to support and work towards good water infrastructure funding and planning for the residents of the state of Idaho.
Ms. Golden?
Yeah, back in the early 1970s, the thought process was right, that we needed to be able to retain East Idaho water in East Idaho. The execution was the failed Teton Dam. Now, that doesn't mean that the thought process was wrong. I firmly believe that we need to retain surface water here in East Idaho because that will alleviate some of the stress on the Eastern Snake River Plain Aquifer. One of the problems that we see with injection wells, with recharge, is as soon as you start shooting groundwater into your aquifer, you open the opportunity for contamination. And if we're talking about the future of Idaho, the last thing that we want is the possibility of contamination of one of the biggest aquifers in Western United States. Now, the other thing that we also need to understand is that a lot of data, or a lot of statements get thrown around without any hard data points. And one of the things that I really want to work towards is actual hard data on how big is this Snake River Plain aquifer? What's the volume? What's the shape? Because if we're looking at injection wells, if we're looking at seepage, if we're looking at any kind of contamination possibility, then we need to actually know what we're dealing with, not throwing out possible hyperbole, but concrete data points.
Thank you. What is your stance on cloud seeding as a tool for addressing water shortages in Idaho, and how should it be supported or regulated? Ms. Golden?
Idaho is the only state in the country that does not require any kind of reporting or transparency to its citizens as far as what is being sprayed in our skies. Now, I know there's probably people out there that say chemtrails aren't real, chemtrails are real. Let's at least, for sake of argument, say they are real. There are things being sprayed in our skies. But going back to my first point, Idaho is the only state, even California discloses what is being sprayed in their skies. And so we also need to understand that there's two different kinds of chemicals that are being sprayed. Number one is for weather modification, the cloud seeding, and then the other one is for basically a sun canopy, blocking the sun. And I understand the science behind them, but we also need to be very transparent with our residents of what is being sprayed and then what are the after effects. What is being rained down on our crops, what's being rained down on our water, what's being rained down and corroding our car paint. And so we need to understand this is what's being done and what is the smart way to do that. I know that a lot of people would like to see it completely gone. I'm kind of in that camp, but I also understand the principle of cloud seeding and the need for water in eastern Idaho.
Ms. Mickelson?
I just want to go back to something, just so everybody knows, is we have the data on all the water going to any of recharge in the state of Idaho. In fact, that water's tested before it can ever be put in a recharge site, and every single well in the area within a mile or 2-mile region is tested every week during the time that they are recharging. So for people to think that we would be contaminating water in our aquifer, that is not true, and I wanted to clear that up. I do think that cloud seeding is, if this year isn't a proof that we need cloud seeding and we need good practices as far as making sure we are using our water resource to the optimum capacity, no water season is. This year is particularly critical to all of our members, not only of our agricultural community, but everybody that relies on water. That's you and me. And so when we look at what programs can we use and how effective are they, we know Idaho was one of the first, and Idaho has collected data for years and years and years on cloud seeding, and it makes a difference if you can hit it right in the good storms, possibly to your watershed, between 10 and 12%. So to think that we want to shut down this opportunity when we have some of the we're in a high desert, we have to make sure that we give all the tools in the toolbox to our area to be successful with our water.
Ms. Mickelson, Idaho voters and lawmakers are considering policy changes around substances like medical marijuana and kratom. Do you support legalized medical marijuana? And should kratom be prohibited, regulated, or just largely left alone?
I do not support kratom, and I don't support marijuana. I think that we have given up an entire generation of young men across this country as we've rushed to legalize marijuana. What we're finding out from these other states, and Idaho is the last great holdout across this country, is that the developing male brain, when it gets marijuana at times in the development of that brain does not develop. And if we have one responsibility as policymakers, it's to protect our youth. And when you talk about kratom is what they consider the gas station heroin. Why would we ever think that heroin would be something good we would want anybody to use? Because we've met with the drug counselors. They tell us kratom is one of the worst drugs they've ever seen, and that trying to get people off of it is as bad as any drug they have. So as far as legalizing drugs in this state, Idaho has been very conservative. I think that they should continue along that path of being conservative and protecting our youth and our people in our state.
Ms. Golden?
I completely agree with Representative Mickelson on this one. Idaho is the last state where there is no legalization of marijuana. And the people that I've talked to across the board, whether it's construction, whether it's farming, any kind of heavy equipment operators, they say, please do not allow this. They don't want 10-wheel spud trucks driving down the road with somebody who may or may not have smoked a joint 10 days ago. It stays in your system 30 days. And then even then, it's stored in your fat cells. And so if you exercise, if you lose weight, you can still pop on a drug test even months or years down the way. Now, I say this as somebody who, my dad is in his 12th year of fighting Parkinson's, and they live in Washington State. And the science behind it shows that medical marijuana does have good effects for Parkinson's patients and for Alzheimer's and for some of these other, for cancer. However, we have still not figured out how to make sure that opioids stay only for medical use. And there was somebody just recently that said Idaho is not mature enough to legalize marijuana yet. And I would venture to say that America is not mature enough to legalize marijuana. And same thing with kratom. These drugs are dangerous to our kids, but they're also dangerous to us if we are out on the roads. We just haven't figured out how to just keep it in the medical lane yet.
Thank you both. Ms. Golden, what specific policies would you prioritize to increase housing availability and affordability?
This is actually kind of a fun conversation that I had with somebody back in Kentucky about a month or two ago. As I said earlier, about 60% of Idaho lands are federally controlled. And as much as Idaho likes the independent spirit, as much as we talk about state sovereignty, it's really hard to be sovereign if we don't actually control our lands. And one of the ideas that we talked about was the possibility of once these If Idaho was able to control our lands again, what if we were to open it up to a modern-day Homestead Act, where we could give kids the opportunity to either choose launch or land? When you graduate high school, do you want to go to launch, or would you like 5 acres that you could do whatever you want to as long as you lived on that land? That would actually give high school students the opportunity to dream again, the opportunity to do something with their own hands, and the opportunity to build something that is the future of Idaho. I'm looking at the kids in front here. That would be my dream for making housing more affordable. But when you look at it, we also just have we have an influx problem. My husband's in real estate, and in 2021, the year-over-year increase in housing prices jumped from 4% to 31%. And so we do have to be able to figure that out.
Thank you. Ms. Mickelson.
You know, I think we have 40% less houses are being built right now than were being built before we fell off the cliff of the housing crisis of 2008. One of the things that's driving that is the fact that we aren't giving our kids the opportunity in trade schools to learn the trades that we need. So our average age of our plumbers and our electricians is over like 60 years old. What we have to do is help get these kids educated so that we can increase the supply of homes for people to be able to live in. Part of that problem we also have is we need to have local control. Our local communities know where they want and need that growth to go. And if we try to control that from Boise, we are going to stop the creativity of the local communities to find their local solutions. We have to make it so that we can keep, and part of keeping our kids here in our state is making it that they have opportunities, and that includes education, good schools, good jobs. And that's what we're doing here in Eastern Idaho when we work with our site and all the jobs that they want to bring in. But in order to have good housing, we have to have the trades, and that's what we've been working on, and that's what CEI has been doing such a great job of lately.
Ms. Mickelson, despite recent proposals, Idaho has not passed new immigration laws. Should the state take a more active role in addressing undocumented workers, or should that be left up to the federal level?
You know, being an elected official, I'm used to taking jabs, and I have been taking quite a few on this issue. One of the things you need to understand, though, is when they start disparaging the farmers and the dairy farmers in this state and calling them slave owners, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to say something, because that couldn't be farther from the truth. Every employer that has been in business for any time at all knows that they have to fill out and keep I-9s and make sure that the people that are working for them are legal. I do not support having the state overlay additional burdens on employers and on individuals. When you start saying that an individual has to prove who they are before they can work, you are adding more layers of bureaucracy. And if I added that same idea, oh, hey, it's fast, it doesn't take very long. If I said that to people about their guns, that they just had to go into a registry, people would lose their minds. Well, the same thing goes with having employers. Do you know an employer in a course of a year between the federal and the state government turns in an employee's name and social security no less than 7 times? In over 10 states across the nation this year, they tried to introduce bills for some sort of immigration reform. As we all know that are in this room and have gone to civics, immigration is a federal issue that needs to be handled federally. And when we move it to the state level, all we're doing is costing our taxpayers and our people time, money, and opportunities.
Ms. Golden?
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, excuse me. Despite recent proposals, Idaho has not passed new immigration laws. Should the state take a more active role in addressing undocumented workers, or should it be left up to the federal government?
Thank you. I believe in the innovation of Idaho. I believe that Idaho is strategically placed in our country to be able to figure this out. And if it were up to me, I would love to see Idaho with 100% legal vetted workforce by 2030. Now, that doesn't mean no immigrant labor. That means legal vetted labor. And because of the variety of industry that we have here in Idaho, we're positioned in our country to be able to help figure this out, to lead the way, to not fall behind and let the feds figure it out, but to be able to partner with the federal government and say, how can we be a testing ground to come up with solutions that work for our farmers, work for our dairymen, work for our construction owners, and figure this out in a way that works for our communities. Because immigrant labor doesn't just affect our farms and even our crime statistics. It also affects our hospitals. It also affects our housing. It affects our schools. Immigration affects every aspect of our lives. And so it is behooved on Idaho to be a front runner and a leader in this issue rather than a follower, and just whatever mandates come down from the Fed, then that's what we do. But we're uniquely positioned to be able to figure this out and lead the way in our country.
Ms. Golden, is Idaho's healthcare infrastructure adequate for the elderly and vulnerable populations? And what solutions do you propose to meet the needs of aging populations?
I think for those of you that were in this room for Mr. McKellar's debate, he articulated it very, very well, and insurance is his field, and so I got to give him kudos on that. Medicare, overall, it does an adequate job. However, we've seen over the last year, there is fraud, there are a whole lot of people that are on it that probably shouldn't be on it. And I completely agree that able-bodied young men should not be on Medicaid expansion. If these men and women are going to their employers and saying, sorry, I can only work 32 hours a week because otherwise I'll lose my Medicaid, Medicare, or I'll lose my SNAP benefits, then that is shackling our young men and women from achieving everything that they are capable of achieving. When they're 20 and 30 and working hard and building a life, that's when they should be going to their employer and saying, boss, can I pick up any extra shifts? I want to save up extra for my anniversary or for Christmas. They shouldn't be holding themselves back because they want to get more federal welfare dollars. And so while I believe that Medicaid does an adequate job for our elderly and our disabled, I think it is being overused by the population that should be going and doing and succeeding in ways that they're just not right now.
Thank you. Ms. Mickelson.
Can you repeat the question? Because I want to make sure I'm answering the question that you were actually asking.
Is Idaho's healthcare infrastructure for the elderly and vulnerable populations adequate? And what solutions do you propose to meet the needs of aging populations?
So I don't think that Idaho has the right balance right now. I think that we are severely lacking, especially when we talk about our rural areas of our state. Part of the problem that we've seen is we have seen the lack of access be a contributing factor for people that are at risk. And when we can't and don't invest in our education for our healthcare fields, we cause a problem for people to be able to access the healthcare that we need. One of the things we have is this rural transformation money. And ironically enough, the people that get put on the committee to decide what we're gonna do with that funds are people that are from big cities. And one of the things I said when we were in a group of people with my fellow legislators is we need to make sure that the people that are being put on that rural healthcare committee are people that are from rural areas and that have maybe even served on a hospital board before, which we have several of those in the legislature, and yet what do? We put the people that are from the largest parts of the state on those committees. So we need to take a look at making sure that when we get money that's supposed to help our aging and our rural populations, that we invest it where it's supposed to be invested, and that we make sure we don't have healthcare deserts across this state.
Thank you. All right. Well, now it's time for closing statements. Ms. Golden, if you'd like to start, you have 2 minutes.
That went insanely fast. I don't know if you guys, it just went really fast. My name is Kelly Golden. I'm thankful to be here tonight. I am thankful for each and every opportunity that I've had to interact with constituents across Bonneville County and across District 32. And I look forward to talking with each and every single one of you. If you like what I've said tonight, if you have more questions for me, please catch me afterwards at the table or shoot me an email. My website is golden4idaho.com. I would love to interact with you. And I want to learn from you guys. You are the subject matter experts in what it looks like to represent you. I don't want to claim to have a corner on that market. I don't want to presume that I know what it looks like to represent each and every one of you. You are as diverse as this community is. And so I want to make sure that I am carrying your voice with me to the Capitol. I want to make sure that your voice is in my head when I am voting. And I look forward to hearing more from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Mickelson.
What an incredible night. What an awesome opportunity. I want to thank Kelly for such a good debate and a thoughtful debate about the needs of our area. I am invested here. This has been my home and will always be my home and the home of my children and my grandchildren. As I look to what we can do to move to the future, we have to be recognizing where we're short, how we can change. And we have to have leadership, and that's somebody that's invested in our community, somebody that sees a vision for the future, and that's one of the things that I worked really hard on as I've served in the legislature. I gotta tell you, some of the most rewarding experiences I've had have been as I've been on my phone at 9, 10 o'clock at night talking to constituents and people that have tried to reach out to me during the day. And I haven't had the opportunity because I've been in committee meetings or different meetings through the day, but I will pick up the phone and call them and talk to them, and hearing their stories about how a policy might affect their life or that they need something different from, the legislature. Those experiences and taking the time to actually listen to constituents has been the most rewarding part of my opportunity that I've had in the last 2 years of serving all of you. Sometimes we think Idaho is so big, my representative won't reach out or won't respond. I got to tell you, I have tried very diligently, and we have no staff. In the state legislature, if you're a lowly representative, you have no staff. And so taking that time to do that constituent outreach is a sacrifice of everything, including your sleep time, as you serve in the legislature. But I want you to know I'm committed. And I hope that you will support me in my reelection so that I can continue to work and stand up and continue the mission of Bonneville County and that local control on the local level, whether it's schools, counties, cities. I'm here for you, and I hope that you'll continue to reach out.
Thank you, Stephanie Mickelson, Kelly Golden, your candidates for Legislative District 32A. Appreciate you both being here, and we will take a 10-minute break and be back with the candidates for the Bonneville County Coroner. Okay, we are going to get started with our final debate for the evening. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for sticking around. For those just tuning in, we are at the Compass Academy in Idaho Falls, and we are about to speak with the two candidates running for Bonneville County Coroner, Shante Sanchez, the current coroner, and Tim Schoit. Just a reminder that you each get 2 minutes for your opening statements. The students here, Spencer and Carter, have a timer. And then we will go on with the questions. You'll each get the same question, and you have 90 seconds to answer each of those questions. And at the end, we will have a closing statement from each of you that can be 2 minutes long. So with that, why don't we get going? I have here on my phone a random wheel generator. This will determine who goes first. And it looks like it is Mr. Schoit, if you want to give your 2-minute opening statement.
Great, thank you. Good evening, and thank you for everyone for being here tonight. My name is Tim Schoit, and I'm running for Bonneville County Coroner because this office requires something very specific: a deep medical understanding paired with genuine compassion for families during their worst moments. Most people never think about the coroner's office until they suddenly need it. And when that moment comes, families need more than processes and procedures. They need accuracy, clarity, dignity, and humanity. My entire career has been about serving people at their most critical points of life. I began my career as a lifeguard in high school, then became an EMT and progressed to become a paramedic in Colorado Springs for 5 years. After that, I became an emergency room nurse, trained in trauma, and then from there, I progressed into what I currently do as a family nurse practitioner. I diagnose and I manage complex medical conditions across the full human lifespan and guide families through some unimaginable decisions. Along the way, through all those years, I earned an associate's degree in emergency medical services, a bachelor's degree in health sciences, and a master's degree in nursing. I've maintained advanced certifications in all of those fields, and that background matters for a coroner, because determining when an autopsy is truly needed requires understanding of how the human body works, how diseases progress, and how trauma presents, as well as how medical history fits the whole narrative. I've also spent years serving this community beyond medicine through church leadership, youth sport, coaching, and volunteer services, because trust is built by showing up consistently. I'm honored to be endorsed by former Bonneville County Coroner Rick Taylor and emergency room physician Joseph Anderson, who was also a former deputy coroner. Bonneville County deserves a coroner who leads with competence, compassion, and respect for the deceased and the living. That is why I am running. Thank you.
Ms. Sanchez.
Good evening. My name is Shante Sanchez, and for the last 15 months, I've had the honor of serving as your Bonneville County Coroner. When I took this office, I didn't do it as a politician, but as a specialist. My background is rooted in the science of death investigation and the complexities of human behavior. With a master's degree in forensic psychology and national certification as medical legal death investigator and a former deputy coroner, I have spent my career at the intersection of public safety and mental health. This unique dual lens allows me to not only determine the how and why of a death, but to do so with a deep understanding of the trauma left behind. I have personally certified hundreds of deaths, ensuring that every case is handled with scientific accuracy and that every family is treated with the dignity that they deserve. During my appointment, I promised to modernize our operations, and I have delivered. I successfully implemented the county's electronic MDI case management system, moving us away from outdated processes and ensuring that our records are secure, reliable, and professional. I have also updated our facility to meet modern standards, but more importantly, I have modernized how we care for our citizens. I have developed comprehensive resources and specialized guides for grieving families, ensuring that no one has to navigate the complex legal and emotional aftermath of a loss without a clear, compassionate roadmap that's provided by our office. But my work extends beyond the walls of the morgue. I have spent years as a keynote speaker and educator training professionals in schools on the front lines of substance abuse, mental health crises, and the coroner's office as a whole. I have brought that same focus on education back to the coroner's office, ensuring that we are an active partner in public health, not just a reactive agency. We are now using our data to help state legislators and local leaders understand emerging trends before they become tragedies. I am running for re-election because there's more work to be done in keeping our communities safe, transparent, and supported. I'm asking for your vote to continue bringing professional, specialized, and compassionate leadership to Bonneville County.
Thank you. First question for you, Ms. Sanchez. Coroners are elected, and you don't have to be a medical doctor. How will you ensure accurate and medically sound death investigations?
So for all of the death investigations that I do, I follow the standards that are set by the National Association of Medical Examiners and Coroners. I follow the standards set by the IACME and as a medical legal death investigator. My job is to investigate deaths and the sole reason behind somebody's passing. I review medical records, and while I might not have a medical degree, my job and my entire education has been fully rooted in knowing anything and everything about trauma, about injuries, about death as a whole, how medical history influences somebody's passing. And I make sure that with every investigation that I do, that I review those and set those standards and adhere to them.
Mr. Schoit?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, coroners are elected and don't have to be medical doctors. How will you ensure accurate and medically sound death investigations?
So with my background, being a paramedic and a nurse, and now a family nurse practitioner, I look at family records every single day. And it's something that requires being very detail-oriented, being able to find the details that are needed from the medical records, but also being able to have those relationships with the local hospitals, with the funeral homes, to make sure that we can get the information in a timely manner so that we can go through that process of looking through the medical records, looking through any other records that we may need to pull in order to close out a case and be able to find closure for families.
Mr. Schoit, under what circumstances would you not order an autopsy?
So for an autopsy to be done, the death has to be either questionable, meaning could there potentially be a homicide, or is there something else that law enforcement may need to do an autopsy to get more information, as well as any unattended deaths that, especially for newborns, infants, where we need to figure out what happened to also help provide closure to the family and to the community.
Ms. Sanchez?
So I follow the national standards set on when an autopsy is deemed necessary. There's about 13 different standards that range from whether the person was involved in, let's say, a drowning, an electrocution, a police involved incident, and so I always will follow those standards. If it's an infant or child, I'll always follow the standards of sending them to autopsy. This is to gain valuable information as well as to collect things like evidence. In addition, one of the reasoning behind an autopsy is if medical resources, so like our local hospitals, haven't been able to provide enough medical records to determine the cause of death on a medical side of things, or if there needs to be documentation of trauma or injury. So whenever I try to determine whether or not an autopsy is necessary, I'll follow those standards, and then I will determine whether or not I have enough information through my investigation, through my investigators, through my collaborators, my medical records, and the documentation that I have. And if I don't have enough information, then I'll send autopsy.
Ms. Sanchez, can you walk us through the process of responding to the death of a child at a scene?
So I actually am just received continued education in infant death investigation about 2 weeks ago. I always try to keep up on children and infant deaths and trying to continue my education in that field just so that I'm up to date on all of the policies and all of the procedures that are necessary to make sure that that investigation is well-rounded. When I receive a call regarding the death of an infant, I always respond to the scene. I'll do an initial examination. I will be there with the parent while they have to say their goodbyes, while they have questions. From that point, we do take them to autopsy. I gather medical records for them. We do something that's very vital to the death investigation called infant doll reenactment. I have the training to do that investigation, that reenactment with the families that will help show us some vital information that could have been contributing factors to somebody's passing, to that infant's passing. And then with all of that information, as well as collaborating with our forensic pathologist, we'll determine a cause of death from that point.
Mr. Schoit?
So although I don't have experience with responding to an infant death scene as a coroner, as a paramedic, I have had multiple cases where I've had to respond to infant deaths, and in those situations, we did everything that we could to try to revive that infant and ultimately transport to the hospital, where at that point they would make the final call. I think the important part is to make sure that the family is able to grieve, which can be in multiple different ways, but to make sure that they can feel, for me, just the compassion that it's tough to lose, hard to lose a loved one. I have a family of 3 boys. I can imagine what families might go through when they lose a loved one, but that's got to be tough, really tough.
As a coroner, you're not only responding to these tragedies, but you're also running an office, and you have budgets, and you're managing people. Mr. Schoit, how do you approach fiscal responsibility while maintaining investigative quality?
So in that situation, as a paramedic, as a nurse, as a family nurse practitioner, I've had to learn how to allocate resources effectively. I've learned how to make sure that we're prioritizing effectively, that resources are being deployed in the right places, as well as making sure that they're getting done in a timely manner. So those are the qualities that I would bring forth in how I'm doing my investigations, but also making sure that the budget that's coming to the coroner's office, that it's being allocated in the right places to have the most benefit.
Ms. Sanchez?
So I've had the privilege of working with our fiscal budget over the last 2 years, and I have made sure that I practice financial and fiscal responsibility. I'm allocating the funds where they need to, which has been right now modernizing the facility and the coroner's office as a whole, making sure that our investigators have the operational funds that are needed in order to do adequate investigations and to do whole and complete investigations. We've been able to upgrade and really care for our facility to make sure that it is fully operational. At this point now that we have been able to achieve that since my appointment, my focus now is solely on staffing. I have no intentions here in the next following year or two to actually ask for an increase in our operational budget. I solely want the staff that is there, that we have shown that there is a need for, so that way we can do whole investigations without lowering our standards. And so I'm hoping to be able to continue to do that and advocate for having that fiscal responsibility while also maintaining the standards that we need.
You mentioned your budget. Does the office have an adequate budget? And if not, what do you need? We'll start with you, Ms. Sanchez.
So as with all elected offices, I'm sure everybody would say that we always need more funding. And the truth is, every office grows just like our community is growing. The influx of people here in Bonneville County has provided some unique experiences and circumstances that the coroner's office never had previously. And so to have an increase in our budget to meet those needs would be a dream come true. However, right at this time, with all of the changes in legislation and the state, the increases to our office probably won't be as exponential as they may have been over the last couple of years. So it's all about being creative with what you have. Like I said, I've been trying to maintain our operational budget without by increasing and modernizing the facility and our needs, and now we can solely focus on maintaining those standards.
Mr. Schoit, do you believe the office has an adequate budget? If not, what does it need?
I can't speak to what the current budget is for the coroner's office. What I would say is, if I'm elected coroner, I would focus on making sure that we're using our community partners to fulfill the mission of the coroner's office, as well as I would want to make sure that we're doing an audit on the coroner's budget to make sure that the taxpayers' money is really being spent in the right way.
Mr. Schoit, what's your view on sending staff to the scene for every reported death? Are there circumstances where that's unnecessary and a waste of money?
I don't think that the coroner's staff is required to respond to every death. For instance, hospice deaths, expected deaths, or deaths that are in the care of a physician are not required for the coroner's office to respond to. There may be some stipulations there where if the death happens in the emergency room or happens within a certain time frame within hospital admission, then the coroner does respond. It's within their jurisdiction. Yeah.
Ms. Sanchez?
So I follow the National Institute for Justice and their standards that they set for medical legal death investigators, which says every scene, every time. And that's what we practice. That's kind of the motto of our office and my team right now is basically you call and I come. Unless it does not fall into the jurisdiction of the coroner, which when we receive those calls, we run through a series of questions or a record of death to certify whether or not that individual does fall into the jurisdiction of the coroner. But state statute has recently changed to say that the coroner must do a separate, unbiased investigation from law enforcement. So if there is an unattended death out in the community or anything that falls into the jurisdiction of the coroner's office, then we will respond to that. I don't think that it is a waste of taxpayers' money. It's not a waste of our time or where those funds can go, because as certified death investigators, we often find things that were overlooked previously, whether it was at an unattended death of an elderly patient, somebody that's been in the hospital, or somebody that has been thoroughly investigated through law enforcement. We still find things that weren't there or looked at previously, and so it's vital that we go to every scene every time.
What is your approach in working with law enforcement while maintaining independence during these death investigations?
So collaboration is key. Law enforcement is vital to the coroner's office. Law enforcement is vital to our community. They safeguard our community, and overall they safeguard my team as well. They provide valuable insight when we go out onto a scene. They're able to be basically the first hands or the first eyes on a scene. They're able to gather all of that initial information for us to kind of be guided into the right direction of what we're looking at or what to be prepared for. Law enforcement, they, like I said, they are extremely vital, and they also realize how vital the coroner's office is as well. We provide insight into postmortem observations. We provide insight into how medical diagnoses may interact in this death. And so they look to us for guidance on the death as a whole, and then we look to them to just help us as well. So that collaboration is key, and we work very well together.
Mr. Short?
So I would echo everything that Shantae just mentioned in regards to law enforcement, in that the coroner's office and law enforcement, they have to work very closely together. Although the coroner's office is its own independent investigation, it can't do that in isolation. It has to be able to collaborate with law enforcement, with the funeral homes, with the local hospitals, and any other agencies. So my focus would really be on making sure that we have timely communication and effective communication, so that each part in this process can do what they need to do to see it to finish.
How do you develop cooperative relationships with hospitals, doctors, county commissioners, other stakeholders to perform investigations successfully?
For that, I believe that I need to, or at least the coroner's office has to come from a place of wanting to work together and collaborating together, figuring out kind of our common ground and working ahead from there. I think there are going to be times where there's going to be disagreement, but I think if we can find a place where we do agree, that's a much better place to start off from than starting from a place of disagreement. But really the important part is just making sure that the coroner's office is going through the right process of gaining the medical records from the hospitals, making sure that they're going through medical records, making sure that they've gone through the right process of getting those records, to make sure that that can all be done in a timely fashion.
Ms. Sanchez?
So I believe schmoozing is the key. Everybody loves to be schmoozed, and I have not been to a single commissioner's meeting where there wasn't some kind of treat on the table. So, no. But in reality, collaboration, working with the funeral homes, working with different agencies, with hospitals, with law enforcement, it all requires your ability at having transparency. If you are very upfront with your intentions, the reasoning behind your intentions, while there are maybe some disagreements, or knowing at the end of the day, having that professional relationship, knowing that overall, what I want is to be a public servant. My duty is to the people of our community. I know that their duty is to the people of our community, and overall, having that really healthy relationship can only help guide us in the right direction.
Ms. Sanchez, how do you communicate findings to grieving families, especially when the cause of death may involve sensitive or criminal circumstances?
So one of the key features that I've really developed with my office since my appointment has been getting families the resources that they need. Previously, coroner's offices as a whole have really overlooked that vital part of the investigation. They've been so solely focused on the scientific side of it, on the why and the how of the death, that often they forget that there are families attached to that person, that they did just lose a loved one. So over the course of the last year and a half, I've really been pushing for making sure that all of my investigators and myself are crisis intervention trained. We have developed family resource brochures. We have developed community support packets with support groups and different community avenues that they can seek help or additional resources with. We've created grief baskets advocates for families, especially for those who have experienced child and infant deaths. When I have to explain something to a family, overall what they want is just open communication. So sitting down with them and explaining everything to them, no matter how long it takes, answering all of their questions, and making sure that when I have all of the answers, they are the first person that I call.
Mr. Schoit.
I agree with everything that Shantae just mentioned. What I would add is that that the families have just continual access to the coroner's office. It's not just a one-time encounter during that worst moment. It's the coroner's office is available to follow up with them, to walk them through that grief process. Like she mentioned, making sure that they have access to grief counselors, to crisis intervention, to all those different resources to not in just that one moment, but carrying forward into the weeks and months and years following that tragic event to make sure that they're not falling through the cracks and not forgotten about.
Mr. Schoit, how would you handle a high-profile or controversial death investigation under public and media scrutiny?
So in those situations, I would make sure that, as with any investigation, that it is led by the facts of the case. That any information that is put out by the coroner's office is going to be accurate and timely. And I would also make sure that if there's any possibility where the coroner can't provide an impartial view or analysis, I would make sure that I'm recusing myself or the coroner's office and allowing an outside agency to come in and take over that investigation.
Ms. Sanchez?
So my duty is to the public, it's to the community, it's to the people, it's to, the families of lost loved ones, and it's to giving the person that passed away the dignity that they deserve. I don't care about socioeconomic demographics. I don't care about age, race. I don't care about maybe, substance abuse, or if it was involving something that's a little more high profile. My duty is to the person that is deceased, and my duty is to their family, and I will always put that first and foremost. In high profile cases, just knowing that as a whole I am unbiased regardless of any kind of affiliations, that really truly helps me in being able to continue being the public servant that I want to be and that I will continue to be for you guys.
All right, with that, it's time for our closing statements. Mr. Schoit, would you like to start?
Yes. So thank you again for the conversation tonight and for engaging in this important discussion. At the heart of every coroner case is not a file or a form, it's a person, and a family who deserves answers delivered with care, clarity, and respect. The role demands sound medical judgment, steady leadership, and the ability to communicate thoughtfully when emotions are high and trust is essential. That is what my career has prepared me to do. From emergency response to life and death scenes to trauma rooms and providing primary care, I've spent nearly 2 decades making critical decisions under pressure, always aware that every decision affects real people. Leadership in this office isn't about titles, it's about earning trust across disciplines. I've spoken and worked directly with law enforcement, fire crews, EMS teams, physicians, nurses, and families, and I understand their roles and their challenges and the importance of collaboration. What I've consistently heard from our community is a desire for a coroner's office that restores humanity, dignity, empathy, and professionalism without sacrificing accuracy or accountability. Those values are not opposites, they are inseparable. If elected, I will lead an office that is medically informed, transparent and timely, respectful of families and cultural practices, and grounded in compassion at every step. This isn't about politics. It's about public trust, professional stewardship, and serving people well when they are most vulnerable. I would be honored to earn your vote and your confidence. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sanchez.
As we close tonight's discussion, I want to bring to focus back why this role really matters. The office of the coroner is often the least discussed part of our local government until it's the only one that matters the most. Over the last 15 months, I have laid a foundation of professionalism and innovation, but my work is far from finished. I am asking for your vote because I want to continue the momentum that I have built. I have already moved the office into the digital age and updated our physical facilities, but modernization isn't just about software. It is about administrative excellence. To me, that means practicing strict fiscal responsibility, streamlining our operations to ensure that every tax dollar is used effectively to provide the high-quality forensic services that our citizens deserve. But not only that, my goal is for Bonneville County to kind of lead the way in death investigations. We are currently implementing advanced protocols that ensure every investigation is rooted in the highest forensic standards. However, elite science must be matched by elite communication. I'm committed to reestablishing and strengthening the vital relationships between this office, our local law enforcement partners, our healthcare providers, and public health and safety agencies. For too long, those silos existed, and under my leadership, we are slowly breaking them down to ensure that information kind of flows accurately and families get answers faster. This leadership extends to the state level as well. I have brought a new legislative drive to this office, taking our local findings to advocate for public health and safety and smarter regulations here in our community. Most importantly, though, I want to continue developing the resources that support you guys during your darkest moments. By expanding our specialized guides for grieving families and integrating my background into our daily operations, we're proving that a coroner's office can both be scientifically rigorous and deeply compassionate. I am a specialized investigator, an experienced administrator, and a dedicated public servant. I'm asking for your support to keep moving Bonneville County forward. My name is Shantae. Thank you.
Thank you. Shantae Sanchez and Tim Schoit, your candidates for Bonneville County Coroner. Thank you for both being here tonight. In the coming weeks, we will be posting questionnaires from each of the candidates, not only for coroner, but for the other races that we've discussed tonight on eastidahonews.com. And you can, of course, visit with the candidates, reach out to them via their websites, and hopefully get answers to your questions. We will be back here Thursday night, beginning at 6 o'clock, for debates in Legislative District 35A, 33B, and 33A. So same format, same time, same place here Thursday. Our thanks to Compass Academy, to our timekeepers there at the front table. We have Spencer and Carter, and to our camera crew from East Idaho News who have helped make the live stream possible. And thank you all for being here and for watching. Have a good night.